Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion, How the Defense Acquisition University implemented a modern LMS for the new skills economy, sponsored by Cornerstone On Demand on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today, Bill Parker, the Director of Curriculum at the Defense Acquisition University, Rebecca Clark, the Center Director for Integrated Learning Systems at the Defense Acquisition University, and Joshua Laux, the Federal Sales Manager for Cornerstone On Demand. In the last segment, we were talking about business process for engineering, and I had to interrupt Bill here for a second. So I want to start with Bill and start on this idea. Rebecca outlined some interesting changes that you guys had to go through, had to rethink through. Thinking of requirements, you guys are so customized for so long that you had to kind of have half a step back. As the Director of Curriculum, you also probably had to rethink some of the way you guys deliver, process, provide the learning pieces. So talk about the business process for engineering piece and how that fits into your world.
Jason, we did. As Rebecca was pointing out, when you look at learning management systems, there are those that are more designed toward academia, where you're going to have quarters, semesters, trimesters, and significant engagement with your faculty member. Whereas corporate learning systems tend to be on your own, self-paced, without as much interaction. In our previous customized solution, we had significant proxy, significant engagement of faculty with the students as they were going through self-paced. We really had to think through and work with Cornerstone, okay, we don't normally do this out of the box. How are we going to figure out how to get the engagement for students while they're going through our courseware? And that was a significant effort. Joshua, if you want to...
And real quick, there was not an option not to do it. You had the user wanted this to happen, right? So this was not only a requirement, but this was I'll use the word deal breaker in many ways, right? Because of the culture.
Yes, when you have a customer that has 15 years of knowing they can contact a faculty member, and our customers are everything to us because we train the people that build the systems for our warfighters. So it's very, very important to us. We're only 2 steps away from the warfighter, and we want to make sure they get what they need. It's easier to adjust with faculty and staff inside DAU on our business processes. We don't want to change that much or make it easier for our customer.
Joshua, jump in.
Yeah, well, first of all, Bill, you're very humble because the Defense Acquisition University has won awards year over year for being the top university type system. And I couldn't agree with you more on the whole, there's a difference between academia and corporate learning, and incorporating all the different modalities of having interaction with the instructor, as well as being able to do self-paced, as well as accommodating instructor-led, traditional people in seats type learning. And before you were using multiple systems to address that, and now with the modern technology, with the cloud deployment, with being able to integrate with tools that enable that interaction is really important, and we couldn't ask for a better partner in that regard.
Talk a little bit about Joshua, when Bill would come to you or Rebecca would come to you guys and say, we need to do this or that. How did you guys work through it with them? Because you don't want to have to be like, well, we can customize here and we can customize there, and then you guys are stuck where you were for the last 15 years. Talk about that balance, that interaction.
Well, Jason, you bring up a great point, and there's 2 different parts to that. One is the customize versus configure. In what's different, well, on-premise systems, you customize the solutions, and cloud deployed solutions is more of a configuration. So you configure to support different business processes. In working with DAU, of course, they did a lot of work up front with defining what's a requirement, what was the word you used? Desirement? Yeah. Desirement.
The non-word, yes.
That's really important, and it's something that we've built the system to be flexible enough to be able to be configured to meet those rules, and to keep our customers away from customizing themselves into a corner. So, great, being able to discern between a requirement and a desirement, critical, and that's really the first step. Then it's more about not can you do it, it's how do we do it, and that's where we're focused on. And I think it really takes a partnership, and listening with 2 ears and not talking with one mouth, often solves a lot of problems.
All right, Joshua, I'm going to throw just a little bit of a curveball at you. All right,
No
we
doubt.
talked a little about baseball season earlier. from a technology perspective, and because this is in the cloud and we talk about configuration, is there a difference between configuration and customization? If I'm customizing something but it happens to be in the cloud, are we playing semantics here? Because I think from a case study, okay.
Yeah, we're really not talking about semantics. We're really talking about a fundamental thing is, are you actually touching the code and making changes in the code? On an on-premise solution, traditionally vendors have been more open to enabling their customers to actually have someone, whether it's a vendor or whether it's the customer themselves, actually touch the code. In cloud deployed technologies, it's not about touching the code. The code is really the only interface to Cornerstone, for example, is through a browser from a laptop or a PC. That's all the infrastructure that you need. So you're eliminating that debt that you talked about earlier in the last segment. But also having it be mobile enabled, which talks about addressing the needs at the time of need and being able to leverage smartphones and tablets out of the box.
That's a great point, because I think too often people just think, well, customization on premise, customization in the cloud. But I think as you put a really fine point, Bill.
And the interesting if you're doing configuration, it's like when you get your Outlook or your Microsoft Office. There are a lot of choices you can make in the settings, in the configuration, the look and feel. Do you have the preview panel on the side, on the bottom? That's what we're talking about. Whereas customization is not a good thing when you go to a commercial solution because you're breaking into the code.
Right.
You can create security vulnerabilities you weren't aware of. And when there's an update, even if you do it as a bolt-on, a separate custom code that interfaces with the system itself, when they upgrade the system, you might break that link. So that's really the difference we want to talk about.
Bill, you bring up a really great point, because in a pure cloud solution, you're really getting away from that traditional update. It's really, there's a release. We do releases 4 times a year, for example, major releases, and it comes to you with the configuration, the ability to turn things off and on. I mean, in the federal government, there's a form called the SF-182. Our largest, some of our largest commercial customers have that capability. It's just turned off, so it's configured to not be available. But in the federal government, and a good number of parts of the Department of Defense as well as civilian, they need that turned on, and it's more about a business process more than just a form.
And configuration comes into play, especially for DAU, when Congress, our friends on Capitol Hill, give you new requirements to train or help different parts of DoD or the civilian world learn different pieces of new acquisition. That's also a key benefit. We'll get to that in a second as well. But that's talk a little bit about how that configuration also matters for you on that end.
It's very significant, and it was one of our business process re-engineering challenges even after go live, because the rate of change in our curriculum based on legislation coming from Congress, changes in policy from the department, for other federal agency partners that we have on our system, we change our courseware continuously. And most of the commercial systems aren't necessarily designed for that rate of change. And Rebecca, you might want to talk a little bit about some of our business process re-engineering challenges there.
Yeah, that's been a really interesting challenge to work through, because but it's also brought us closer together with Cornerstone, because when you go through the implementation process, we used a lot of sprint sessions, where everyone's in a room for 5 hours, they're working through a problem, and you're trying to configure the system based upon how you think day-to-day life works. After it's live, you're in real day-to-day, and you realize, oh, whoops, we didn't think through every detail and ripple of how this works. And so when we come and ask for solutions on what the right way to configure is, Cornerstone will come with some possibilities, and we try it out and we go, whoa, that's great. Oh wait, there's a ripple effect over here on this configuration. So we've got to come back to them and talk to them so they learn about how our business works more, and we learn more about the possibilities of configuring. And through that process, we understand both sides of the coin better, and then we finally get to a solution that incorporates just the right amount of configuration and just the right amount of business process re-engineering change.
The old Goldilocks method.
Yes, and so somehow now we worked on this the last few weeks. We're to a solution that we think will work well for the continual re-uploading of product. And that was a very large collaborative effort.
Well, that's a great segue because I want to talk about where we are today. We described the problem. We described how we're kind of fixing the problem. So today, DAU has a new system, is using the new system. Joshua, why don't you start off with where are we today with DAU's system?
Well, I think something was really pretty astounding and an accomplishment is that DAU actually went live 4 months early for the internal users and 3 months early for external users. That's huge in today's world. I mean, it's very rare that you hear that a new application, which is at the core of a business, goes live early, not late. So that's one thing to note. Where we are today is if we look at talent management, and that's really what we're talking about. Learning is at the core of that, and what DAU has recognized is that in this effort to consolidate systems, have the capability to be able to leverage the data that's already there. DAU internally is looking to accomplish things like performance management, accommodating the applications that are required to be used, but also succession management, because I think we're all pretty much aware that there's going to be a tsunami of people who will be retiring in the not too distant future. And how do we prepare our people to be able to step up and be skilled and developed to be able to take over?
Rebecca, jump in a little bit as well. You guys have a new system. Have you turned off the old system? Are you fully in the cloud? Are you running parallel? Give me the update of kind of the at the ground level.
So we were very lucky. We had a plan in place to have parallel systems running for a few months.
You're smart, by the way. Yeah.
And that really worked well. And what we were just discussing this week, in fact, that we had a plan just in case it didn't go live well, that we could roll back and we didn't have to use that plan. And so that was nice. But we have had parallel systems for, I believe, about 3 months. And we kept reminding those in the old system, hey, this is your last chance to finish here. We encourage you to go register in the new system. But that system was turned off to students in December. And then the contract will be ending shortly this next week for that system. So it's kind of a sad moment in a way because you're used to something for so many years, but we've let it go and we're putting all of our attention into the new system and products.
And this new system is fully in the cloud. It's considered
Yes.
software as a service. And it's for the user, they do what? They log on through a website, they log on through their mobile phone, whatever they need to, but it's all web browser based, maybe Joshua?
Yeah, well, of course, the DAU site is a great entry point for the university system. So it is all cloud, and it only requires having a browser, and they're really agnostic when it comes to browsers, so they can use any browser, whether it's IE or Chrome or whatever it is. And then, so that reduces the debt of legacy internal stuff, and then as well as supporting mobile smart devices as well. So yeah, it's really encouraging and it's great.
And Bill, jump in because since you focus on the curriculum side, what are you seeing now that this is live and this is working? What's different for you today than maybe 6 months ago or 9 months ago?
Well, it's been so successful. We have other federal agency partners. Department of Homeland Security hosts their courseware on our system. The Federal Acquisition Institute, who is a very close partner, they train acquisition for the non-defense part of the federal government. They're on our system. It's gone so well, we have 2 other agencies, the Department of Defense Schools, DODEA, Educational Agency, and
Defense Media.
Thank you, Defense Media Activity. I always want to call it something else, DMA. And we've just started discussions with another federal agency that wants to join. When it goes well, you have a lot of friends, and we've been able to accommodate them. And just to let you know the volume, we graduate over 1 million people a year. When you count the defense acquisition workforce, the other Department of Defense people that like to take our courses, Homeland Security, industry partners. And some of those are only 1-hour modules, but 1 million completions a year is a big deal.
Joshua.
That actually, you bring up a great point from a scalability perspective and from a depth perspective, because when you go to the cloud, you have infinite scalability, and the vendor plans for that.
Right.
If you have it on premise, now the vendor has to say, oh, what happens if we have a spike? Are we not going to be able to service some of our customers? So that's yet another benefit. That's an economic, but also an operational benefit that organizations like DAU and our other customers are realizing that.
You also have to, as the customer working with your vendor, Cornerstone, in your contract, you have to think through some of these future changes, the scalability. You'd better have some contract language that gives you options to expand, options to go into other areas. For example, in the future, it's gone so well, we're looking at some of our HR functions, our performance evaluation functions, expanding into those areas. And this is made possible by good contracting language and a partner that you don't get everything. One thing you lose when you go from a custom solution, you will not get everything you want, and you do have to make adjustments. However, you don't have a big investment. You haven't invested in all the servers and all the upfront money, so you can leave more easily. We don't have a strong prenup, I guess. We can break the marriage, but the beauty of that is, as a customer, when you can leave more easily, Cornerstone's much more responsive to their customers, and they know they have to keep on their toes and make the changes that are needed.
Real quick, with just about 30 seconds left. Bill, you mentioned not a big investment up front. I think a lot of our listeners, since we're talking case studies, someone's going to ask, well, what did this cost, or how much does it cost? Because you also talk about spikes. Roughly speaking, how would you compare the cost to this system to your old system? Can you make the comparison yet? Is it more, is it less? Are you 20% less, 30% less? Do you know yet?
Exact numbers hard this early in the process. What I would say generally, the upfront cost is a lot less. You're probably paying more in sustainment. It's much more level. You don't have the spike as the system gets older, and getting out of it's harder.
All right, Josh.
Yeah, it really speaks to total cost of ownership. So at the cloud, it's just the licensing and the implementation, and that stays pretty flat. When you think about the total cost of ownership from an on-premise solution, you're talking about the partial FTEs to support the IT infrastructure, the actual infrastructure itself, as well as the cost of the licensing. So it's really overall, and what we're experiencing in the marketplace is that you're seeing that a cloud deployed system has economic benefits. So over the life of the contract or period of performance, organizations are actually saving money, but they're also being able to redeploy their valuable resources to focus on other things as well.
And it's not just saving money, though. It's getting more capabilities even for the same money.
Good point.
So let's take a quick break, and we can come back. We can continue our conversation. You're listening to How the Defense Acquisition University Implemented a Modern LMS for the New Skills Economy, sponsored by Cornerstone On Demand on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.